The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Thursday, the 8th of January, 2026. We are live here with Financial Rebellion. We do not have Catherine this week, but we have the amazing Carolyn, the amazing Reinette, and the amazing Twila. So welcome, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes, so glad to be here.
Well, let's get started. Carolyn, tell us what's going to happen on the show today.
Okay, we gave an assignment to our guests to come up with 3 action items to fight the control grid in 2026, and they're going to bring us up to date on their areas of interest having to do with the control grid. We've got some shorties to show you, and then I'm going to go over our offering that you can get from the Solari website, Coming Clean. And so our subtitle's kind of Coming Clean in 2026 and what you can do to come clean and fight the control grid. And we're going to start with, I think, Reinette Senum of Foghorn Express Substack.
Hi, guys. So as many of you know, for the last few weeks, I've been blowing the horn around the FCC and the proposed rule changes to fast track cell tower deployment all throughout America in every neighborhood, whether it's rural or urban. And so there was a 30-day comment period with FCC docket 25-276. And according to EHS, Environmental Health Science, they essentially got 3,150 submissions, which is good considering it was during the holidays. And I have to say, this is very much a tactic that our legislators take when they don't want their voters to know that they're passing legislation that they probably would not approve of. And so where we are right now is as of January 1st, there's now reply comments. And that means that you can now comment on the submissions during the comment period. It gets a little bit confusing. So nonetheless, EHS does have a great page that literally just breaks down, gives you the links, gives you a template of what you can say, just gives you a step-by-step instruction, and we'll have that actually below as well. And I don't know if Lou wants to pop that up right there, but it allows us a 15-day period to reply to these comments. And if you did not comment originally, what I suggest is you go on there, you find a comment that you disagree with. There's plenty of them. And you can kind of use that as your way to get your comment in. And so for those of you who may not be aware of what's going on, essentially we have had a coup d'etat during the holidays. And so we had FCC come along and say, as soon as the government reopened, the first thing they did is they had a congressional committee that was pushing through, a bunch of bills that mirrored what the FCC was trying to do. And what it really does is it destroys local government as we know it. And what that means is that the telecoms can come in, they can deploy cell towers, antennas anywhere, everywhere they want to. There's no more consideration of environmental, well, there really was never before, but even we wanted to discuss about some cultural areas, historic areas, sensitive areas, schools, churches, things like that. No more
Indigenous, Indian issues.
Oh, yeah, reservations, so setbacks, no notification to the cities or counties, no public notification whatsoever. The antennas are just going to be installed, and there's nothing you can do about it. In fact, if you push back, the feds will automatically just approve it right away, the antenna deployment. So that happened. The FCC did that. Congress mirrored exactly what the FCC wants with a whole host of bills. And then at the same time, over the holidays, we had Trump signing this AI bill that basically said to the states, get out of the way, AI infrastructure is coming in, whether it's data centers, connecting to the grid, you have no more say. And so this is truly, as I've said, as being involved for 20 years as an elected official, I've never seen such a coup d'etat in my life. And so we also have a video we put together, 8-minute video that explains what happened over the holidays. And what I really recommend is that we encourage people to go to their city council members and go to their county reps, because we did this in December before Christmas. We had a group of people who went in and they literally sat before the city council and they taped their mouths shut. And they talked about how in 1996, there was a Telecommunication Act that made it essentially impossible for any decisions to be made based upon environmental or biological harm done by these antennas. And there was a court case, which was the Environmental Health Trust versus FCC, that basically said to the FCC, look, you have got to update your 1996 Telecommunication Act. There's much more information now. There's many more studies, and you have to update them. And instead of doing that, FCC has dug their heels in and said, no, in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to ignore the court order, and we're just going to go out there and just destroy local government altogether, so you have no say whatsoever. So we've never seen anything like this before. And when we went before a city council, I could tell, because I know them very well. I've sat in that seat. They had no idea what we were talking about. They had no idea that this was going on. And I could tell by their face that they have no idea that their local decision-making is ready to be completely destroyed in 2026. And what it also does, everyone, is it opens up a Pandora's box, because it actually sets a precedent for all of big industry to come in and ignore all local control, whether it's telecom or something else. So this is an extraordinary amount of measures going on during the holidays. It's really, it's quite criminal in my opinion. And people have got to know, and they've got to alert their representatives. And let me tell you that there has been extraordinary cacophony of California League of Cities, National League of Cities, mayors around the country who've been protesting against this, writing the letters off to the FCC saying, you've got to be kidding us. You can't be doing this to us. And more than likely, this will end up in court. However, the danger is, if it does end up in court, there is a very good chance that we will not get a stay from the judge, which means that while we're in that court process, the telecoms can come in and start deploying their cell towers and their antennas.
Yes,
Reinette,
there's
tell us
been.
about the video. I want to hear more about the 8-minute video you were just mentioning briefly.
So the 8-minute video, what we did is we had videographers on with us while we were in the city council chambers. And so I took all that footage plus some other stuff and put together exactly the coup d'etat that was occurring during Christmas, and was really kind of going into exactly what is at risk at every single level. So that is, Lou has that, and I believe that it will be available on CHD TV as well.
Well, so that means that people who are interested in doing something similar in their own city council can watch that and say, oh, this is how they went about doing it. Let's follow suit or improve on that or whatever.
As a matter of fact, what I can do is I have a PDF of, so what we had is we had 3 people go to the mic and we said, look, we are speaking on behalf of those who've been silenced since 1996. And we just kind of laid it out. This is what's going on, and how we cannot talk about biological matters, environmental matters. How we talk about the 2021 court decision with EHT and the FCC, and how the FCC continues to ignore this, and our legislators are mirroring what the FCC is trying to do. This is actually a shot of us in the outside before we went in, and we grabbed their attention. So we do have the script for the 3 speakers, and we have them speaking about 90 seconds each, and they're saying basically we're speaking on behalf of those who've been silenced since 1996. And I was carefully watching, because I was there, the face of, there's our speakers. I was watching the face of our city manager and our city council members, and I could tell that they had no idea this was going on.
Right.
Wow. I think we got a clip of that though, haven't we?
We just showed that,
okay.
yeah.
All right, okay, got it.
Right. And now what Trump came out with when you were talking about his AI thing, isn't that an executive order rather than a bill?
It is an executive order. Yes. And it also is being fought. So I think that, really also we're going to need the assistance of a lot of our attorney generals. And this is going to be like a state by state fight.
Can I remind people that CHD has a whole group of people who are fighting the electromagnetic radiation from the cell towers. And there are cases that CHD has sponsored, and there's a lot of testimony. There are some interviews of people who've been damaged. When you say you can't bring in biological factors in fighting that means you can't argue that you have to move out of your house because it's causing you headaches, and you can't live in your house because it's right next to a cell tower, or citing that sort of thing. It's health issues. There's a court case that interprets the existing act, the Telecommunications Act, as discounting that as an excuse not to approve an application for a cell tower. You can go in and look at some of the interviews and some of the materials on CHD if you want to have something to testify about or describe in these hearings, local hearings.
Right, correct. And one of the things I made very clear in a video I did on Substack was that while we were all locked down during COVID, very quietly in the middle of the nights from about 3 a.m. to 5:30 a.m., there were utility trucks in cities and towns all around America for 2.5 hours where they would expand the broadband from pole to pole while we were all sleeping. And this is literally the backbone of the digital cage. All they need to do now is just simply add the antennas. So this is all premeditated. And what people don't realize too is it does reduce your property values by at least 20%, up to 25%. People have moved out of their homes. There have been cancer clusters on school grounds, in schools, and that's generally the only time we really see cell towers being removed is when there's cancer clusters within the student body. And so there's no one who's going to be spared here at this point in time. And they do want to have antennas at a minimum of 400 to 750 feet apart. So there's nowhere you can escape. And this is part of that digital grid where they can actually watch you, follow you, surveil you, where you're shopping, who you're with, where you're traveling. You're in an open air prison, essentially, is what we're dealing with. You're in an open air prison.
Right. Reinette, I have a question. Are there cell towers in the national parks? I was looking at the national park issue in connection with the case having to do with saying that the government should accept cash in national parks. And I was wondering, are there cell towers in national parks? Because when I drove through a national park about 2 years ago, I didn't have cell phone reception while I was there, and I don't know whether that's the situation now or not.
Well, I do know there are cell towers in state parks right now, and they do, and basically this bill would also allow antennas to be put in every state and national park and wildlife corridors, in river canyons. There is nothing and nowhere that these antennas cannot and will not be deployed into. And let me say, they want them in the parks. They want them in all the parks. They want them in all the wilderness as well.
Wow. You can just imagine the cell tower right next to the National Monument, in the Washington National Monument.
They can now put it on top of the monument. They can put it on top of the Statue of Liberty's head if they want to. That's how bad it is. Yeah.
Let's just say to remind our viewers, we can see your comments. Thank you so much. If you have questions for anybody here, do send them in and we will try our very hardest to answer them. So do send your questions in. Let's hear from Twila.
Yes, well, I'm here to talk about Real ID. And for those of you who don't know, the TSA has implemented a fee, which I like to call a fine, that will start on February 1st. So we're really talking about just 3 weeks away before their plan is to implement this identity verification fee. And it also includes not only $45 for this fine, but also to put you through a biometric and demographic screening, which means they'll put you essentially in another line. They say and this is all if you don't have a real ID.
Or including a passport, right?
Well, so they know. It's so in the heading of their press release, right? They say that travelers will now have a $45 optional fee if they don't have a real ID. Then you have to get down into the text of the press release to see that or other acceptable identification. But this fact that they have put this in the headline as though if you don't have a real ID, you will be fined, and then that the news media also basically took that headline and didn't say if you don't have a real ID or a passport card or any of the other identification cards, then you will pay this $45 fee. They didn't make that terribly clear. And I think, that whole thing, the reason why they would do that is just to get people to, to comply, to get this federal identification card that's going to be digitized and biometrically controlled. But I think, now is the time. So they would say that there's about 90% of flyers that already have acceptable identification. But really, if you look into their rule, there's going to be about 200,000 people traveling every day that do not have acceptable identity. And so these people are going to be told to pay $45 and get into another line and hope that they can make their flight. And the agency, Department of Homeland Security, says we cannot guarantee that you will make your flight. So everything is being meant to push you into the real ID, from, not saying all the words that are necessary to tell you what the other options are, to get, scare tactics like this, like you may or may not be able to make your flight. Now, they do say that they hope that people will go online in advance and pay the $45. But then you have to ask yourself, how is TSA going to know if it's really you that paid the $45 to have this verification process? And the other thing that I would say is that what they say for their lawful reason to be able to do this. They say it's not even a rule. It's just a notification. So they say they don't have to have a rule. They don't have to have public comment. They don't have to get anybody's permission to do this, because they say that they're allowed by a law to build travelers programs like Global Entry or like TSA PreCheck, and that they are allowed to charge for these programs. But let's really look at the difference between what they're doing now and those programs. So TSA PreCheck costs about $85 a year. $85, and it lasts for 5 years. Global Entry costs $120 and it lasts for 5 years. This program, which is why we call it a fine, this program is $45 and it lasts for 10 days. So if you are traveling for 2 weeks or longer, you are going to have to go through this process and pay this fine coming and going. So this is all meant to get everybody into the real ID. And I regularly have pat downs at the airport, and of course I refuse the camera. And everybody is allowed to refuse the camera and should. Just say I'm opting out, and say I'm opting out before you give them your identification card or the boarding pass, or both. Okay, so, but I regularly have a pat down, and one of the things that allows me to do is ask the TSA agent questions. And so I said something about, this fee coming on. She goes, it's long past time for people to get this card. They've had plenty enough time. Well, I don't even think that the TSA agents necessarily know what this card is, or what the plans are for it, or how it could be used according to the law to be a domestic passport for everything that you do in life. You'd have to have a card that's under federal control, digitized, and using biometrics and building a facial recognition system. I don't know that they know that, but it's always interesting to talk to the TSA agents. So anyway, what I would say is, when you go, please get a passport card as soon as possible. Now, it seems to me that you can come to the airport without a real ID, so just with your state driver's license, and you will get through. It's also possible you could come to the airport without any kind of ID whatsoever, and you would pay that $45. And they would do the biometric picture of you, and they would look into your data, and who knows whether or not you get on the plane in time. I think you will get onto the plane in time, because they've always been able to do this process for people who lost their ID or had it stolen. But I think they're trying to scare you. But just know that it's entirely possible that people could come without any kind of ID. It's not clear in the notice. It's not clear in the notification. It's not clear in the press release, that you have to have any kind of ID to come at all, and that you could, then just pay the $45, go through the process, and get on the plane. So I just want to prepare everybody for what to do and what they know will be happening, or what to know will be happening at the airport when you get there. Please take notes. If something's going to happen to you major at the airport, if you can keep your phone as long as possible and just start recording, even if it's a oral recording in your top pocket, right? Let's just figure out what's happening. And it's happening differently at every airport, because I can assure you, I've been to many airports, and it's very different what happens. Whether it's the pat down piece or the cameras or everything, it's very different what the TSA agents say. This is not coordinated. This is like, rogue TSA agents, TSA agents that are amenable, TSA agents that are apparatchiks, TSA agents that are all sorts of people, and they treat you all differently. And so it will be interesting. We'd love to get your stories. If you go to refuserealid.org, there is a section at the very bottom of that page for you to share your story about what happens. Either if you go to the DMV, which we're asking people to do, and get back to a state driver's license and give up your real ID, right? So give those stories, but also stories now. What's happening at TSA when you provide a real ID, provide a state driver's license, provide a passport card, any other kind of card. So that's one of the things I wanted to say. The other thing I want to say is that Reason Magazine has a new article about a court case, and it's about a court case of a legal citizen of America who they wouldn't accept the real ID as identification. Homeland Security, I believe that was, or law enforcement. Anyway, they wouldn't accept the real ID because Homeland Security says the real ID cannot verify citizenship. So of course it can't verify citizenship, because the real ID can be given to anyone with lawful status in the United States. But that is not what you're hearing out of the government. It's like, we're going to know who the citizens are. We're going to know everybody. Well, law enforcement didn't accept the real ID as a valid ID in this court case. So know that this whole push towards real ID has a different premise, underlying premise than you're actually hearing. And this is why everybody has to keep themselves out of the real ID system, get a passport, tell your legislators to extract your state so you do not have to have a real ID. You do not have to, because some states have to have a real ID. In other states, there's no law that says you have to have a real ID, but the DMVs are not allowing you to make a switch. So we just got a notification from somebody in Utah who said, I tried, but it didn't work. And Utah said, we are no longer providing non-real ID cards. Well, I don't believe that anywhere in their law it says that. And so it's something that we're going to investigate. But you can see this whole push, and you as individuals who are listening to this broadcast have to do everything possible to protect yourself from the real ID system, the surveillance system, tracking system, digital system, biometric controlled system, that is taking place here. And I just want to encourage you, because we have a bunch of initiatives that we are going to put out. We're going to get some merchandise that you're going to be able to wear. We're going to have a truck that's going around with a much bigger, much more exciting sign than the truck that's going around currently. And we've got other initiatives, but the biggest thing that you as an individual can do is to ask somebody if they have a real ID. And then they'll go, well, I don't know. Okay, well, pull it out and let's see if you have a star. And then, or you can say, I'm opposed to the real ID. How about you? You have to get the conversation started. And I had a conversation at a very big shindig in Washington, D.C., where somebody said, well, what are you here for? And I said, well, we're here because we're talking to people about our opposition to the real ID. And he looked at me, he goes, I love the real ID. I said, well, that's just probably because you don't understand what the real ID is. And I told them it was setting up a a facial recognition system, that the DMVs plan to digitize it, put it on your phone, that the law allows it to be used for far beyond flight, for everything you can think of, from banking to renting hotels to getting married. And he looked at me and he said, "So it's the Minority Report?" So he got it. It didn't take more than 2 or 3 minutes for him to get it. And I said, yes, and you can turn it in. Get rid of that real ID and go back to a state driver's license so they can't impose it across the country. So I'm just encouraging everybody to do that, because you have mouths and eyes and ears on the ground, and you can make a huge impact here. And send people to refuserealid.org, where we have all the documents, but also where they can register that they made the switch back to a state driver's license. That map of people who are registering is growing on the bottom of our website, refuserealid.org.
Twila, I have a couple of things to say. First off, did you not say on a previous financial rebellion that some states you can't opt out?
That's correct. There are 5, according to the Department of Homeland Security. They're all Republican states: Georgia, Texas, Florida, Wyoming, and Mississippi. However, we are finding, because of this campaign, that either there are rogue DMV agents on the ground, or that states as the entirety have just decided we're not going to do it anymore. And the reason I say that there are rogue DMV agents on the ground is because if you look at our map, you can see that in almost every state, people have been able to refuse and get back to a state driver's license. However, we're asking people, if you refused, if you couldn't make the switch, you asked and you couldn't make the switch, say you haven't. So we got this little tiny thing, right? So people are saying it, and they're telling us the states that they come from. And we're looking at the data going, but those are states where other people have been able to make the switch. So we will be having another map. We're in the process of creating another map to show that, so people can actually see that what we've got are rogue DMV agents on the ground. If some people in the state can make the switch and other people in the state cannot make the switch, then it's the DMV agents who are telling people you can't make the switch. And we want to actually show that in a very visual way. So that'll be the second map that will come up.
And I have one more thing to say. So over Christmas, I had to fly to England. And when I fly to England, I fly on my British passport. And when I fly to America, I fly on my American, just because the lines is much shorter. I don't know if I'm allowed to do it, but I do. But so coming back into America, great. You get to meet someone. You looked at your passport, all normal. Going into England, Heathrow, there was not a human being around their boxes. So I then went back to where a human being was, the person that's saying, Americans there, English there, that person. He's like, I can't help you. You have to go through those boxes. That's the only way. So I did go through the boxes. The first time I ever had, all that kind of stuff done. But there was a woman next to me who was stuck in the box because they wouldn't accept her passport or whatever it is, her fingerprints and stuff. And there was no one around to help her. She was crying. It was awful. But the point is that the way of the future, that there's just going to be boxes and no humans? And if you want to go into England or wherever, you have to go through the boxes. Is that where they're going?
So I've never heard about, quote, the boxes, but I have certainly heard about the fact that you have to have this stuff now to go into the EU, and I can't remember if England, is out of the EU now or not.
It's out of the EU, yes.
It is, yeah, right. That's what I thought. So Brexit worked. But the EU, is terrible, because they are totally in this grid, into the control grid. And so I think that, they want to decrease the number of people that they have to rely on. And so they are moving into everything being done by AI, being done by computers. If you look at IDEMIA or, the companies who are building the digital ID systems for them, IDEMIA in particular talks about how they want augmented authentication, which means everything happens through your body. Your body is your ID. All they need is cameras and you. And so I think that's what you're talking about. So that woman is stuck in the machine that doesn't recognize her credentials and won't let her go through, and she's got nobody to talk to. That's an incredible story.
Everybody's
of how the machine
nightmare.
works.
Right.
Can there's something I would like to add here that I don't think people fully realize, and this is extraordinarily important. You have to understand is if any of you have ever been hacked before, your bank account, social security, anything like that, right? Everything is siloed. And sooner or later, you can fix it, you can correct it, and change your password. But what people don't realize is on your digital ID, on your phone, everything in your life is going to be on that phone. Social Security, EBT, your driver's license, your health records, bank accounts, everything is on that. And that, I have to tell you something, is a hacker's dream. And India has already shown to us, and China, what this means. They had over 1 billion people were hacked. Their IDs were hacked. 2 million people were left out on the streets and essentially did not get their food rations, essentially the EBT rations. People starved in India because once this happens, once your phone gets hacked, it's not like you can just get it all back again and start all over and change your password. Everything, your retirement, your social security, your medical, your face, your fingerprints are gone for good. You are now a digital refugee. And I have to tell you, folks, if your whole entire existence is on your phone, that means that is a hacker's dream. And we already know how the elderly are being targeted on phone scams and email scams. Just imagine what's going to happen when our everything, our net worth, our retirement, our property, everything is on there. Imagine what's going to happen. Every hacker in the world is going to be going after those digital IDs. And once it's gone, it's disappeared. And that means that you're never going to, again, be able to go into a federal building, go on a plane, go on a train, go shopping, buy gas, have a car, have a driver's license. I don't think people realize. And right now, China, that never saw homelessness, has tens of millions of homeless people on the streets because either their social credit score was too low or they got hacked. And this is not a matter of if, everyone. This is a matter of when your life, your world, your retirement, everything you've saved and worked for, everything that should be privately your own is going to be hacked and going to be gone. This is a horrific setup by our own legislators who are so dumbed down, they don't even realize this is a national security risk because it can completely obliterate America's wealth. It's unbelievable.
I want to say that that is true. But I want to also say that that does not have to be the future.
100%.
And so the future does not have to be that. And we are working with state legislators to on bills that would stop real IDs or give you the opportunity, not the opportunity, the right to not have a digital ID, to not have all of that stuff on your phone. And if you look at some websites like Biometric Updates, which is the website that I keep track of, you will see how the articles where they show the concern about the face, about how your face can be hacked, how your fingerprints can be hacked, but not only hacked, but sort of like melded with something else. And so how it can be used against you, but also used for their priorities of budgetary, profiteering or of, hacking, whatever it is. And so this does not have to be the future. And I think the important thing to understand is the legislators that realize this and are going against it, very much like, the legislator in Oregon, why can't I think of his name? Anyway, he's got the bill to for the Travelers Privacy Protection Act to make sure that those cameras get out of the airport. There are the bills against digital ID happening at the state level. Everybody's got to speak up to their legislators. Don't think that they can't do anything. If you can make it really clear to them how we could become China, remember the pictures of China, remember the drones, remember this, remember that. And then the DMVs are talking about actually putting all of this stuff on your phone. And the law says that identity can be required for everything that you do in your life. I think state legislators, we were successful in Minnesota at stopping the digital ID. As soon as they realized that every time that you used it, it pinged the government because, of course, it's a digital ID. It has to be set up by somebody. As soon as they realized that shut down the debate in the committee. It shut down the bill in the committee. So I think, people have to speak up. They have to see what the potential future is, just like Reinette said. But It doesn't have to be the future, and it's up to we, the people, to make sure that it doesn't become the future.
We have a question from Macro Val. She's asking, basically, bottom line, are we going to have to give up our cell phones to stop this?
No,
Well,
I don't
that's
believe so.
you shouldn't
Well,
have to.
you can certainly take the apps off your cell phone.
Yeah.
And there is no law that says everyone has to have a cell phone.
Right.
So I think that it's going to take some patience and some willingness to go through some time working out what your alternative is. So leave extra time if you're going to the airport, for example, and when you're trying to get things done, just realize that if you say, I don't have the app on my phone and maybe I don't want that app on my phone, you're going to have to work with the alternative system, which is more time consuming probably. But there is no law that says you have to have a cell phone. And I know people who talk about going to restaurants that have the QR codes and, want you to go through your phone, and they either leave their phone in their car or they say, I don't have a cell phone. And, they're going to have to deal with people who say, I don't have a cell phone, or I have a flip phone. And the more people, that's how you fight back. That's one of my things on my list of how to fight the control grid is take all the apps that you can off your phone. Do not have ID things on your phone. Don't have links to your bank account on your phone. The fewer things that can be hacked, the less likely you are going to be trapped, as we've described in some of the cases.
Right. And I do want to say what Twila was saying is that this is not a done deal. We're letting you know what the potential is, what the risks are. And the legislators also need to know it's a risk for them too, because they have retirements, they have 401ks, they own property, they have bank accounts. So they don't want this to happen to them and their family as well. They just don't know about it. Your city council members, your county supervisors, they don't know the inherent risks. So again, our job is to inform them so they can make a better decision. And once they find out these risks, as Twila was saying, they don't like that. Once you inform them, they're like, wait a second. I thought this was about convenience. I didn't know it was going to just put everything and consolidate it so that I can be hacked more easily. Whereas at least before we were siloed, you had some form of protection and separation from everything in your life. So our job is to inform you now what the risks are so we never get there in the first place.
And I would just say there are two things. There's one, the danger of being hacked and everything that means for your life and all the losses that could happen out of that. But the other one is the danger of complete control over your life, whether or not you would ever get hacked, right? Where essentially your life is hacked by the government controlling what you can and cannot do. And so when I think about this and what Carolyn was saying there, I think about how there were about 25% of the American public who didn't go along with the narrative. It is the 25% of the American public who saved the country from the narrative. And so likewise with this, it has to be at least 25% of the country, and hopefully lots more, because eventually that 25% grew and grew and grew and grew as people kept seeing the truth from the 25% and started to recognize the lies from the narrative and started to pile on to the 25%, and that number grew who's going to be resistant, to the shot, resistant to the mask, resistant. That resistance grew. And so, we who know, and everybody who's listening who now knows, have to tell everybody else and show them the truth, because that is how we will win. Some people have absolutely got to say no and then keep opening their mouths and let it so that other people's eyes can be opened and that they can resist too. It's really the power of the people. I'm totally in belief of the power of the people, and the legislators will move according to the power of the people. That has always been the case. They will move to wherever the public is, and the public has to be in reality and resistance.
In loyalty to Catherine, I want to also point out that part of this control grid, the plan is to take our stuff, to take what we own, to control, take our bank accounts, to take our property. And we have a couple clips because, people think that they can escape this by buying gold or buying Bitcoin, that somehow you're going to escape this control by getting out of dollars. And we think that continuing to use cash is a really important thing because that is analog. We want to go to analog, and nobody can track you when you pay a dollar bill to buy something, and nobody will be able to put you into a system. Our term for the day, I'll just mention it since I'm talking about it, is surveillance pricing. What they're doing is based on all this data that is collected about people, they're charging different amounts for different people depending on how much the system thinks your maximum ability to pay or willingness to pay. And this comes into plane flights. I know that Catherine recently was making reservations for a plane flight and went in and priced it online and then went back and the prices change. Well, that's not necessarily because all of the prices happen to change between the two times that you went on and checked it. It can be because your IP address or something that you do online that connects you with that grid of information is telling the system that you're on for example, plane flights, who you are and how much you might be willing to pay. And Reinette, you were talking about Instacart also, right?
Right. There was a study done where they got a group of people together. They got them on their phones at the exact same time, and they had them purchase the same products, and they saw a difference in prices. And so it's kind of like a DMV vetted information on everything, your banking, your online shopping, your whole entire history. And based upon that, they will adjust the prices. So once again, I go back to, if you have a digital ID, you lose your phone or you lose your digital ID, you're not going to even be able to purchase these things. But nonetheless, this is being quietly put out, and Instacart got busted, and I'm glad they did. And so it's really up to us to also start calling out the airlines, because things always start with the airlines first, because it's kind of like a captured industry, or you go on, you have very few options. And that's where they started years ago with, sorry, you can only use your credit card if you want to purchase your peanuts or your little pillow or your blanket. And so they do a lot of stuff through the airlines. And we need to pay attention to that. And we, again, just like what Twila was saying with digital ID, you've got to talk to your legislators. This has got to be illegal. You cannot have these different price points according to what your bank account looks like. It's horrific. So again, this involves educating our legislators.
And remember that anecdotes to legislators can really make a big difference, particularly when you're talking about the people that are easier to talk to, like your city council members or, the people that are even the state legislators. I will tell you, in interactions with Catherine has lots of legislators involved in, trying to get things changed. And they will tell stories about things that happened to them or someone they know, and that gets them all excited about the issue. And so the more you can suggest situations to them that they might encounter, or if they have kids, the EMF at the cell towers being built on school grounds, doing some research about the people that you're trying to move to find out what the areas of interest that they have that might be ways to convince them to change their positions as opposed to what their party says. That's really important. But can we play our shorties talking about fighting the digital control grid? We have, the first one is an interview that Solari did. Actually, it was John Titus, who's on our Money and Markets show for subscribers every 3 Wednesdays out of the month, with Catherine on our Money and Markets. But John is trained as an attorney, actually a patent attorney with lots of legal experience, and he also has a lot of banking experience. But he interviewed a gentleman named Ian Davis about Ian Davis's book about the control grid, and it's really an incredibly eye-opening interview. But here's the shorty. Lou, can you put that up?
close are we now to having the trap sprung, having the trap thrown, and living in a digital dictatorship and not being able to escape the system of slavery that you're describing? How close to realizing that are we right now? How many moves do the powers that be need to achieve the plantation that they're after?
I think, unfortunately, technologically, the infrastructure has already been built. It's already there. But their massive problem they've got is that they have to somehow entice us into going along with it. Because ultimately, this is a behavioral control system. Once our digital identity is linked to programmable digital currency, then they will have total behavioral control over humanity.
What are the biggest impediments to achieving digital dictatorship that exist right now?
Well, we are, the people. If we don't go along with it, if for example, it's slightly different outside of the US, but certainly in the US, if the people of the US demand that their constitution is upheld, then they've got a problem. They can't go ahead with their plans. For example, not accepting and not using stable coins and demanding that they are treated as a currency, a national currency, because that's what they are.
Cash is a big impediment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, what could we do? What can people do? Yeah, sure. So people can, I think the most important thing is people realize the power that they've got in their wallets.
Right.
The decisions that people make about what they buy, let's look at it this way. There's a reason why they want to control what you buy, where you can buy it, who you buy it from, and how much money you can save. Because once they've got control of that, they've got control of you. Well, the flip side of that is that if you consciously make those decisions that you're not going to support this digital dictatorship, that you're going to use cash, that you're going to be as self-sufficient as possible, that you're going to buy from people whose values you respect, that you're going to do business with people who you consider to be honest and trustworthy, then if we exercise that power, that is precisely the power that they're desperate to take away from us.
Right.
So clearly that's the power that they are most fearful of. So that's the power that we should exercise.
And we also have a shorty of a truck driver explaining why buying gold and Bitcoin is not going to save you. Lou, can you bring that one up?
Bitcoin and gold is only going to help you in a world where you can spend that stuff. What I'm trying to tell you is the direction they're taking us in, that ain't the world we're going to be living in. You ain't going to be able to spend gold. Well, gold has always been, in the old world, gold has always been currency. See, that's where we disagree. Y'all ain't hearing me when I tell you there's going to be a new world, a new life, a new way to live. And if you're not willing to live according to the way they say we're going to have to live, you're going to have to be like an outcast, disbanded, out in the wilderness somewhere. In other words, living off the grid. You can't do nothing with gold. Lumber worth more than gold. You can build a house with lumber. Dirt, land, soil is worth more than gold. You can build on that. Gold only has the value that people place on it and say it's valuable. If they say it ain't valuable, it ain't valuable. The only way you're going to be able to function in the system, I don't care how much money you got, how much gold, Bitcoin, whatever, the only way you're going to be able to operate in the new system is you're going to have that digital ID. That's the only way, y'all, and that's where we disagree at. Y'all don't believe that. Y'all think the world gonna be the way it is now, and if you got gold and Bitcoin, you're gonna be all right because you're gonna swipe your card, swipe your wallet, swipe your this. I got this, I got that. No.
This is not whether to buy gold or not. This is talking about the larger issue of, what is our life going to be like? And we have to admit that things are not going to be the way they used to be anymore. And I think we're fairly short on time in terms of talking about coming clean. So we may do that next week, talk about some of the things that we can do in our own individual lives to come clean, because we're all part of supporting the system. We're using it. But we have asked each of our guests to come up with 3 things that we can do to fight the control grid. And I'm going to start with my list, and we're going to ask the other guests to do the same. My first action is educate yourself about the data centers. Somebody had a question about the data centers. The data centers that are proposed all over the place. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is fairly close to Wilmington, Ohio, which is sort of an exurb of Cincinnati at this point. And that is where our vice president is from. This is, that's Maricopa County, but they're just on night before last on the news, there was a clip on the people of Wilmington, Ohio, fighting an Amazon data center. And they all showed up for the city council meeting, and they fought it, and they testified. And the city council put off the vote on whether to approve Amazon's plans for this data center based on the fact that there had been not enough information disclosed about the water they were going to use, about the electricity, about all the details of it. And the fact is that the data companies are going in and trying to get permission to do these big data centers without informing the local residents until it's almost too late. So if they can do it in Wilmington, Ohio, which is not a wealthy place, believe me, you can do it in your neighborhood too. And also educate yourself about the status of the flock camera and any other license plate reader systems. We have lots of information on the Solari report about that, and there are people all over the country fighting these flock cameras. And actually, I've noticed that it's actually been on the local news. We have in Cincinnati again, we have contracts for flock cameras and surveillance systems going in, and people are now just figuring it out. But educate yourself, look up and find out there's a website called DFlock. I think it's dflock.me, where you can find out where the nearest flock cameras are based on your zip code. And there's one right up the street from me, right by the cell tower on the property of an elementary school. So the more you know, and another thing that you can do is share what you know with the people in your lives. Ask them about the cell towers. Ask them if they're affected by the cell towers. Ask them if they know about the data centers going in nearby. And the more that you talk about how much it means to you that these things are happening, the more you can spread the word. Also, call your representatives, whether it's city council, I live in a township, your township board, your state legislators. Get on the phone, get on the email, and tell them what you think about these things and how strongly you feel about it. And it's not a matter of just signing petitions, because they don't count the votes very much from a petition. They listen to people who have their own stories and have written their own and developed their own speech, and not just parroting what somebody else tells them. And my third thing was clear as many of the phone apps off your phone as possible. And obviously a flip phone is a good idea. I do not have a flip phone anymore, but Catherine has a flip phone, and you might actually get a second phone that you can use. But that's a certain amount of expense, but you can actually have two different phones. So Reinette, you want to give us your list?
Well, I don't know. I think that might have been more than 3.
Okay.
Well, I go similar to what you're saying is I would talk to everybody. I would, like what Twila was saying, inform them what the digital ID really means. And they're selling us on convenience, but it's not convenience. It's a consolidation of our lives on a device, which is very, very dangerous. Make that very clear to people. I would also say that go to your city council. We're now in January. So city council, county supervisors, they're going back to their public meetings. Go there. I'll make sure to have the 3 different scripts. I'll give it to Lou. So it's part of this program down below, and use that as your script. You can do the melodramatic direction that we did, which is taping our mouths for an effect, or you can just have people go to the mic at public comment to the beginning of the meeting and say, this is what's going on. Do you have any idea? Also, I do have some resolutions that you can also give to your city or county so they can actually have a resolution, put it in place, vote on it, and then send off a letter to their congressman or woman. The other thing regarding flock, I would really, really recommend that you do in California a public records request on your city and county, or what's called a FOIA, Freedom of Information request, in the other states. And I'd ask them, where are all the cameras? Where's the data? Where's the protection? Have any arrests been made because of this, which none have, because the flock camera is a third party company that just collects the data and sells it out.
Who are you giving the data to also?
Oh yeah, all that. Who are you giving the data to? Where is it going? I mean, there's a whole host of questions you can ask. And if you don't know what questions to ask, I actually recommend, speaking of AI data centers, you can jump on Gemini or chat and just say, what do you recommend for this freedom of information request? What can I ask? I would definitely do that, because you need to put them on notice. I believe the city of Santa Cruz recently was able to get the city council to vote against the flock cameras and are having them removed. So there's that. And then again, I would just say, kind of what you were saying, Carolyn, is you just got to talk to everybody. You got to talk to everybody you know, and you've got to inform them this is going on and let them know about what the FCC is doing. Congress, even our own president with executive orders, they're fast tracking the digital world through the cell tower antenna deployment and AI deployment without our say, without our constitutional rights even being considered. And right now, the most important thing for us to do across the board, besides using cash, is to inform people as much as you can, because once they find out, they don't like what's going on. They just don't know about it.
Right, and we're not going to have any time to go into detail on this, but another thing that is pending legislatively is the efforts to add the liability shield for the pesticides into the Farm Bill. So if you're calling your legislators on the federal level, mention that also. Twila, what about your list?
Yeah, I have 3, and they all start with M. Make digital ID a really big issue. Make the switch back to a standard state driver's license, and move back to money. And I just want to say about the digital ID. I mean, I love that truck driver that you had, because did you notice when he said, you're going to have a digital ID? Just like that. He knew it was a chip under your skin. Most people aren't even thinking about that. They're thinking still about it just being on their phone, but actually it's a move to go from the real ID on a card, right, to the real ID on your phone, to the real ID in your skin. And so when I said, make digital ID big, it means that you have to tell everyone everywhere. They have to see what is going on. And we did something, an article that I read about facial recognition and where the government is going, and the contracts that it has now with ID.me. One of the little factoids in that article said that the IRS moved away from facial recognition because it was controversial. See, because people knew it. In order to get onto the IRS site, they had to put their face on, and they didn't like it. People don't know what's happening now. And I agree with Reinette. If they knew what was happening, they wouldn't like it, and they would do something. So you have to speak up. So again, make digital ID big, make the switch back to a standard driver's license, come to refuserealid.org and tell us you made the switch, bottom of the page, that red map, and then move back to money. Nothing could probably be more powerful than refusing digital ID and moving back to money.
Yes, and Twila, we have a question about how people can contact you directly. Somebody has a bill that they're interested in.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. I'm the general email is info@cchfreedom.org, info@cchfreedom.org. But also you can just call and at 651-646-8935. I'm not going to give my cell phone over this program, but that will get in touch with us and we will get back to you.
And Reinette, contacting you, Foghorn Express, do you have an email or what?
You can actually, if you need to, you can reach me at Reinette, Reinette, at protonmail.com.
Okay, great. Polly?
Well, we're out of
About
time.
out of time, but
Yeah, but I just want to say one thing and that is that, and it's come from all three of you, is the most important thing I think we can do is educate others. And that's why we make these shows. So share these shows to people, because Twila, Reinette, you break it down so simply. You've educated me on the many times you've been on here. And so I think we need to share these shows, because Reinette and Twila, they put so much work into coming on here and educating you, and then send them to Reinette's.
Oh, and by the way, it's Reinette Tutamel, not Proton, Tuta, tutamel.com, sorry.
And Polly, are you going to tell us to pray big?
Oh, absolutely. Pray big and stand firm and never settle. Okay, I didn't stand firm in at Heathrow Airport, so I apologize for that. But we've got to stand firm and we must never settle. So there's that. But to our amazing guests, thank you so much again for educating us. I don't know how to thank you enough. And Carolyn, as always, and Lou behind the scenes, and Matthew, thank you for making the show possible. And to our viewers, we'll see you next week with Financial Rebellion.
Okay.
All right. So tell everyone your name, please.
Hi, my name is Peg Bauer.
Peg, and we're going to start with your grandson, okay?
Okay.
So tell us what happened to him. Did he take the COVID vaccine?
We don't know.
Right.
And I wasn't notified that he was in the hospital until pretty much his organs had already failed.
Okay. Do you know what happened to him?
He was taken to the hospital when he got COVID by his girlfriend, and I don't think his mother was notified until much later. And then I was notified later, and by the time I was notified, he had pretty much gone into organ failure. Of course, they kept telling the family that, he was going to get better. Pretty sure he was on remdesivir and the whole protocol. So he didn't quite manage to die in time, and he was in one of these hospitals that has several hospitals throughout the state. And so they told the family, well, he could get better treatment at another one of their hospitals. So they put him on a tax-supported helicopter and flew him to a hospital on the other side of the state, where I suppose they started on the bonuses again. They admitted him, determined he had a COVID, was admitted to, all the different steps for which they got financial bonuses. And he finally died.
Awful, I'm sorry.
So he was really a healthy guy.
Did he have children
before this?
Was he married?
Yes, he had children.
Young children?
Young children.
That's terrible. All right, so now let's talk about you, because you got injured as well, didn't you?
I did. I was injured 14 years ago. I was having trouble running because my feet were hurting, and I was told I needed gastroc surgery because my hamstrings were a little bit short. And it's a really short surgery, 10 minutes each leg. So I went to my pre-op, and they advised me that I would need a flu shot. And I've never been I have a military background. I got out of the military before I was required to either get court-martialed or have anthrax vaccines. So, but I thought the flu shot sounded pretty benign. I'd had flu shots in my life, and I didn't know that they were as dangerous as they are. So I went and I dutifully got my flu shot at a grocery store a couple days before surgery. I went into surgery and I woke up paralyzed from the waist down. I was supposed to walk out that day, on crutches, but I couldn't move at all. So they put me in isolation because I also had MRSA colonized in my nose, which most people have. So they were very anxious to get me out of the hospital. I was in isolation that night. The next day they discharged me. They told me I did not have paralysis. It was all in my head, and I was apparently making it up. They threw me in the car with my driver. My driver was close to my boss, and the hospital advised the driver that I was essentially making all of this up. She drove me home. We called some neighbors who carried me into the house. Fortunately, I had already had a hospital bed put into my living room because I knew I was not going to be able to do stairs. And I was essentially there alone. I live alone with a couple animals, and I had a walker, and I had to teach myself how to walk just by locking my legs, and I had lost all motor control and motor memory. So I was supposed to be back to work the next day, and of course I wasn't. I couldn't even make it to the bathroom, and things became very difficult because they were told that I was making this up. I'd never heard of Guillain-Barré, and I finally diagnosed myself 10 years later.
And does it affect you today?
Yes, I will be crippled probably the rest of my life. I have a variant which has resulted in catastrophic damage to the axons and also the myelin sheath, and there is a variant that actually hits your brain stem, and I am lucky enough to have that variant. One of the things, I could not speak more than 3 words, and then my mouth would just go garbly on everybody. And it's called Bickerstaff brainstem encephalopathy. I had vision issues. I lost all motor memory of anything. I couldn't remember words. I was working as a lawyer, and that's kind of difficult if you can't speak, right, and you can't stay awake. It's just hideous, and I had to work, otherwise I would have been out in the street.
Is that the last vaccine you've ever had? Did you take the COVID-19 shot?
No.
Why not?
I'm sorry. I looked at that and I thought, you got to be kidding me.
Did you get COVID? I
finally got COVID last year.
And how'd you treat it?
Just like a bad flu. I really didn't do anything. I have ivermectin on hand and everything else, but I didn't need to take that.
So you just dealt with it?
I just dealt with it. And
so is there anything that's ever going to make you take another vaccination of any kind?
I wouldn't. That's yes, a doctor asked me that last week.
What did you say?
I said only if I break your arm 3 times.
You told the doctor that?
Yeah.
So the answer is no. You're not.
The answer is no. I know, and my dog will never get another vaccine either.
Right.
So it's and I've seen so much of this in the dog world.
Oh yeah.
It's just hideous.
Vaccination of animals. Yeah, we're getting a lot of people wanting to tell their stories about their animals that are vaccine injured or dead following.
Oh yeah.
Tumors popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Well, now when I grew up, I had 2 vaccines as a child. I'm older. I had the polio and the smallpox back in grade school. I got tetanus when I went to camp. I had all the childhood illnesses, as all my friends did.
Measles, and you survived.
I had measles, mumps, rubella. All of the whooping cough. Pertussis. It's all. We all had that. It was just a rite of passage. The schools emptied out, and we all came back. Nobody died. Nobody entered into the hospital. And then I went into the military, and. Of course, they line you up and you're given everything. The anthrax did not come until later in my career, and I was sort of.
You got out before the anthrax.
I did.
Well, that's good.
I was facing either court-martial or get the shots.
So court-martial you went for?
No, I was able to slide out without any of that, but it was before I could retire. So.
Well, thank you for your words of wisdom and for talking to us and telling us. Anything else you want to say?
Well, I think the population thinks flu shot is just benign, which I thought it was too. But I'm on a number of Facebook groups for Carolyn Betts, doing medicine by Facebook now. And it's amazing, probably a third of the people that have this got it from a flu shot. And you can't get into a neurologist these days. I know people who've tried to get in, and they don't even have waiting lists anymore.
Well, thank you for warning people about the flu shot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Do you have a picture of your granddad?
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.